Understanding the self is having insight into one's own behavior, attitudes, strengths, and weakness. It is a person's capacity to express and understand what he or she excels in and where they need to grow. Self-understanding is one of the highest goals in psychology. Understanding the self is a required course in tertiary education's general education curriculum. Its purpose is to assist students in comprehending the concept of identity and the variables that influence and shape personal identity. Philosophy. Philosophy comes from the Greek word philos and sophia, which means love of wisdom. In a broad sense, philosophy is an activity people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves, the world in which they live, and their relationships to the world and to each other. There are numerous philosophers who are well known in the field of philosophy, and here are the three philosophers that we will discuss: Socrates, Plato, and Saint Augustine. Socrates. His philosophy underlies in the importance of the notion knowing oneself. By fully knowing oneself, a person will be able to achieve happiness. Plato. Our soul, according to Plato's notion of self, is the only thing that is unchanging and eternal. Our bodies serve as either a shell or a prison for our soul. Saint Augustine. Saint Augustine follows the idea that God encompasses us all, that everything will be better if we are with God. He believed that God in his teachings affects various aspects in life, that everything is better if we devote ourselves in mending our relationship with God.
Sociology is the study of how human society is established. It focuses on how society works and the people's interaction with each other. According to George Mead, the notion of a person develops from one's interaction with other people, where he proposes the two components of the self, the I, where it is the reaction of the individual to the attitude of the others, and the me, which are the characteristics, behaviors, and/or action done by a person. He also proposed the three role-playing stages of self-development: the preparatory stage, which is from birth to 2 years old, where infants simply imitates the actions and behaviors of the people that they interact with; the play stage, from 2 to 6 years old, wherein children begins to interact with the people around them, where they practice real-life situations through pretending that they are in a play; and lastly, the game stage, from 6 to 9 years old, where children are able to identify their roles and the roles of other people in the society. Anthropology is the study of human species and its immediate ancestors, that includes its four main subdisciplines. Cultural anthropology is the study of human society and culture, which describes, analyzes, interprets, and explains social and cultural similarities and differences. Archaeological anthropology reconstructs, describes, and interprets human behavior and cultural pattern through material remains, such as plant, animal, and ancient garbage. Biological or physical anthropology focuses on the past and present evolution of human species, and is especially concerned with understanding the causes of present human diversity. And lastly, the linguistic anthropology. It studies language in its social and cultural context across space and over time. It also studies how speech changes in social situations and over time.
The psychological perspective of the self. It is about the cognitive and affective representation of one's identity or subject of experience. Two types of self as proposed by William James. The me self, it is the phenomenal self where the person is known. The I self is the self-thought that reflects to the mind. This self is separated into three categories. The constituent of the self, which is our physical body; the emotions arise, which is our self-feeling or affect; the actions that prompt, which is our self-seeking or instinct. Under the self is the three subcategories: the material self, constituted by our clothes, body, physical family, and home. Social self that is based on our interactions with society. Spiritual self that is the most intimate type and have the ability to argue and discriminate. The physiological perspective of self is divided into different conceptions of self. The concept of Carl Rogers came up with a non-directive intervention. This concept of him results with the perceived self, the real self, and the ideal self. In this concept of David Lester, he emphasized person as an unified beings and the concept of multiple selves. Different identities that vary depending on roles and relationships. In Sigmund Freud's concept, he argued that self is divided into three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. He also stated two important divisions of mind, the conscious and unconscious mind. Kenneth Jurgen's concept explained that individual has many potential self which can identify how we bring ourselves in every situation. For the concept of Donald Winnicott, he tackled the function of false self to hide and protect the true self. This concept made up the distinct representation of one's identity or subject of experience.
The self in Western and Eastern thought. Internal predisposition and social circumstances always influence an individual's belief and philosophy. Being an Asian or a Westerner is determined by more than just physical characteristics. The West and the East each have their own concept of self-perception, which influences their political values, beliefs, and way of life. Western culture predicated on putting egoism first, which means it focuses on oneself and personal needs. This is inclined in more acquisition of material things and is obsessed with being successful. In this culture, wealth and poverty is the result of enterprise and hard work. They celebrate the youth for being young and subscribe to the idea of evolution. Eastern culture is all about the collectivism or focus on others and the feeling of others. It is tilted towards less assets and is more inclined with long life. As for them, long life is equated with wealth. The Eastern self includes the concept of Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and Filipino psychology.
Physical self. The physical self refers to the body in which we interface with our environment and fellow being. People nowadays are too conscious of how they look, how they see themselves in the mirror, how people will look at them, and what people will say about them. Our concept of ourselves and the perception of people around us will have a significant effect on how we deal with the situation, cultural or not. People from different cultures have opted to change their features in an attempt to meet the cultural standards of beauty, as well as their religious and or social obligations. As our physical self dictates how we act in front of the other people, it also defines how we will manage our self-esteem. The inflated self-esteem, these people hold high regard for themselves better than the others to the point of underestimating them. The high self-esteem, this is a positive self-esteem which makes the person be satisfied with themselves. And low self-esteem, this person does not value themselves and does not trust their possibilities. Sexual self. As we learn to appreciate the beauty of our physical selves, we should also learn to appreciate the beauty of our sexual selves. According to Johnson and Master, 1966, sexual responses follow a regular pattern consisting of 4 phases. The arousal phase is characterized by subjective sense of sexual pleasure. The plateau phase occurs just before the orgasm. The orgasm phase is an intense, pleasurable experience. The final stage is the resolution stage, which is defined by a decrease in arousal, particularly in males. Diversity of sexual behavior. 2 types of contraception: natural contraception, artificial method.
According to James, that man's material self is not only consisting of his own body, but also includes the different things he possesses from one's family, friends, as well as things such as one's clothes, house, cars, gadgets, and even the amount of money he has in the bank. Material self. One defines themselves and at the same time is being defined by the people they are acquainted with, along with the accumulation of objects and achievements that a person acquired from the different endeavors and experiences in life. Tall. We represent ourselves through clothes, the gadgets we wear, the friends we have, and the things that we do. All of these contribute to whether we are accepted or not in the world we live in. Having the spiritual self, according to William James, this is the most enduring and intimate part of the self. The innermost workings of the person's mind, behavior, beliefs, and morals that involve every aspect of the human as a person. And next is the manifestation of this spiritual self, the person's will, things that the person wants to achieve in their lives, intelligence and abilities, things that the person have confidence in doing and believing to have a certain mastery of, morals, things that are acceptable for the person, a person's definition of what is right and wrong, the values, the ability of the person to prioritize based on what is important to him.
Moving on to the political self. From the previous elections, we have seen many grand rallies, campaigns, and of course political debates of the Filipino people voicing out of what they think is right or not. As Aristotle said in his Politics, he believed man was a political animal because he is a social creature with the power of speech and moral reasoning. Hence, it is evident that the state is a creation of nature and that man is by nature a political animal. Digital self is a persona we put on to draw in the innovative world. In the online world, most of us have the need to impress other people and show our ideal self to create a favorable impression, and this is when selective presentation happens. Humans are social animals and we regulate our behavior online to fit in. For instance, in social media, we have a lot of what we call the influencers. They create content on what matters to their target audience or what gains more likes and attention. This is not only specific to the influencers but also on most people. We are very selective of what we want people to see and hide to people. The impact of the online interaction on self is that we tend to have an online persona and compare our construction of identity in the real world versus the online world. To end this presentation, I would like you to remember that even though the line between the offline and online self has become blurry, given that we have become more digitally dependent, only you yourself have the power to choose how technology will impact you and your life.